how to YouTube. Step 1. Do a cold open stating what the video is about, giving the audience the exact same information they already had by reading the title of the video. In this video, I will continue my Tomb of Horrors build. Step 9. Upload with frequency and do not disappear for 6 weeks at a time. Hello everyone, Wylock here. Thanks for joining me today. Got a bunch of different tips and tricks and micro projects to bring at you as we delve further into the Tomb of Horrors. As always, this video presupposes that you've seen the previous 4, so I won't retread covered ground. Step 12. When you're done kicking off, shove something in front of the camera, which could be your face. Alright. Here we go! And remember that our sponsor is Heroes Horde for you 3D printers out there. Excellent selection, including all True Tiles lines. We last left off in room 14. There's a secret block in the east wall and a whole bunch of verbiage to talk about it, but honestly, it's not worth my time. It's a secret passageway, so I just made another one of those 2D crawl spaces. Beyond that, the corridor widens to 10 feet and turns southward, where steps lead steeply downward to a corridor that goes west. Now steps. Long time ago I did stairs on this channel and showed how I would make inserts for my tiles, but in hindsight I don't think they were the best approach. So I tried something new here. To make an insert illustrating steps, I took chipboard rectangles and then painted them up exactly as my dungeon. So solid black base coat, sponge on a good layer of dark gray, and then lightly sponge on a layer of light gray. The difference is I also sponged on a very subtle amount of white. The reason why will be clear in a moment. Then I marked off my steps. I think I did 3/8 of an inch or something like that. Just some subtle pencil marks. And then with some cardstock as a mask, I used pure black in my airbrush and created some gradients. So this imagines that the light is at the top of the hallway going down, catching the lip of each tread and not illuminating that inner corner. Once all those are done, just sort of freehand, I did some triangular shadows. So it's narrowest at the bottom and there's no shadow at the top. So it's like 2 triangular areas on each side. Yeah, that illustrates, and it's a 2D way to sort of hint at stairs without having to actually make 3D tiles. Oh, and this is why I speckled on some white. Airbrushing black really dulled everything down, even the spots I didn't intend to hit. So starting with a bolder contrast, let the overall stone look match my tiles in the end. Alright, so back to the map. This hallway goes west, and then long story short, there are 3 doors in a row, each with a pit trap after them. Now the module says that all the pit traps in the dungeon are the same. They have 5 iron spikes that are poisoned. You might recall that I made the first 6 pit traps for the entrance hallway back in the first episode of this series. But looking back, I'm not quite happy with them, so it's time to revisit. So a 2-inch square of chipboard, then a thin frame of chipboard about a 1/4 inch wide glued around the perimeter. Then I poked holes in the bottom with an awl and inserted toothpick tips and glued them in place. Hot glue worked, but I did eventually switch to white glue. So super easy, but a little more modular. They look like they would fit in place in any sort of dungeon that I'm likely to come up with, as compared to the old traps which were filled with rubble. Now on that note, I'm going to do something while we're here. Here's one of those old pit traps. I'm going to tear the spikes out, and then with some kitchen shears, cut this square into just sort of a rough shape. And now, it's rubble scatter terrain. Perfect, no extra work needed. And that's going to come in handy later on at the end of this video. Step 18. Add brief digital close-ups during pauses, as this suggests that this is an edgy presentation and will instruct the audience to realize that this is a humorous moment. Step 19. Ask a completely banal question that you don't actually care to hear the answer to, but ask the audience to leave a comment below in order to drive metrics. So you guys like these new pit traps, or you like the old pit traps? Leave a comment! Moving on up, this hallway runs unnecessarily long northward, and it ends at a locked oaken door. And there's some details that have nothing to do with modeling. And what else do we see here? As the door falls away, blah blah blah. The walls of the passage ahead of you are of smooth white alabaster, and the floor is highly polished smoke gray marble. So the foundation of this tile was built like any other hallway tile. I just didn't put the squares down. Then I primed it with a light gray, and I tried to mix some pearlizing medium with white to try and get that alabaster look. For the floor, I went to simple print and paste, because I thought, this will pop nicely. It contrasts with the rest of the hallways. It'll look nice on the table. Doesn't need to have a grid, whatever. And those walls did not come out good at all. So I also got some textures for that and print and pasted those. Then there's a whole lot more needless detail about how to run this trap, but basically it ends at a lava pit. So for this lava pit, I cut the foundation out of double corrugated cardboard as usual. For the walls, I imagined them as a natural cave area. So I took aluminum foil, rolled it up into sticks that are about 1/4 inch wide, and hot glued those around the perimeter. So a stack of 2 of them gave me a height of 3/4 inch, just like all the other tiles. Then I crinkled up and decrinkled another sheet of aluminum foil and covered the walls, including wrapping to the underside. It's helpful to apply some white glue on the underside to seal those edges down. For the surface of the lava itself, I used hot glue, just teased it around with the nozzle of the hot glue gun a whole bunch. And as a side note, that seals down the other edges of that aluminum foil. And after priming it with a nice gray, I painted the walls first with a dark brown. Then a beigeish, tannish highlight, really doesn't matter too much. Just a simple dry brush. And finally, yellow, orange, red in that order in the airbrush. Solid yellow first, everywhere, and then more toward the periphery, the orange. And at the very periphery, the red. By the way, if you like this result, make sure you check out my volcano video from a few months back. I'll put a card on the screen. Now the third pit trap has a secret door in its south wall, so I'll just use my normal secret door clip-on to represent that. And there's another short 10-foot crawl space. So once again, just one of those 2D crawl spaces. And moving on, stairs descend to the west, and the corridor that extends beyond the bottom of the steps is slightly cloudy with fear gas. I'm going to do this as an insert. To show the foggy hallway, I just took some product packaging. This is the clear plastic from, the front of a toy or something like that. I cut out the rectangle so it would insert into the hallway, airbrushed some light gray onto it, just some swirls, and not shown here, but I did take it outside and seal it with some matte clear spray. Once the south door in that hallway is opened, we come to 18A, the false crypt. Beyond the door, a stairway leads down. The way is blocked by thick webbing that fills the area from steps to ceiling. For the spider webs, I've previously done this into water, but it works on this silicone mat too. So I just drizzle hot glue all over the place, give it a minute to cool, then it peels right off, and I can cut out the rectangle I need to insert into the hallway. So they clear the webs and move on, and lying on the floor at the bottom of the stairs is an iron mace inlaid with silver. That's just an item, I'm not going to model that. South of this location is a modest-sized room filled with rotting and decaying furnishings. Well, to represent that, I'm just going to use the rubble piles that I made out of my old pit traps from earlier. Now, characters who enter the room will see a solid gold couch along the back wall. A skeletal figure that resembles a lich wearing a crown on its head rises slowly from the couch. This is actually just a greater zombie, but the trick is to make the party think that it's actually a Acererak. The miniature for my greater mummy, the fake Acererak, is just a 3D printed model from Miguel Zavala. He's the guy who made all of the D&D monsters for free. You can download the STLs and print them. I actually met him at Mace this year. Great guy, check out his collection, check out his Patreon. Now let's look back at some of the artwork from the original first edition module to get some inspiration for the gold couch. Well, I see those circular bloom things on either side, and I remember my beads bin. These look kind of similar to the picture, so I took some toothpicks and white glued them on, about 1 inch apart. Made 2 of those and white glued them to a base of chipboard, just a small rectangle. And on the bottom, gluing on 4 beads of the same size and shape. Primed it with gray, and then used this Plaid Treasure Gold. I love this paint. Plaid is a friend to the channel and to our community, and this is an excellent metallic gold. So there it is, and for reference, here was my first attempt at the couch, when I wasn't really trying, so I'm glad I went back. If the characters investigate the room's contents, they can see a jade coffer, the dead monster's fallen crown, and a fine leather bag. Now, the coffer might be worth modeling, so let's do that. The jade coffer I built exactly as for the chests back in room 13. To paint it, I just painted it with a jade green, that's convenient. Then I gave it a green wash, nicked the edges with the original jade, and attached some bit from my costume jewelry leftovers. Now I know this wasn't the most exciting of entries, a lot of hallways today, and honestly that took a lot of my actual construction time. But hopefully amongst all those miniature projects you found something that was helpful or that you liked. Recently something came up in my YouTube suggestions. It was a video talking about how this isn't a good dungeon, and in fact is a terrible dungeon, is unfun. It's because it's unfair and it relies on player ability rather than character ability. I can't argue any of that, but as I've said before, it doesn't mean you have to run it exactly as written. Of course, that calls into question, do you really need to model it as written? So, well, I forgot where I was going with that, but anyways, no matter which way you look at it, this is an iconic dungeon. My plan is to basically take it with me to gaming conventions and set it up for display. I like intriguing stories and interesting characters, but I've never been particularly good at coming up with them or, acting or role-playing, so I tend to gravitate toward old-school dungeon crawls like this one. My favorite module of all time is the Labyrinth of Madness, which is a 2nd edition module, and it was sort of intended as a spiritual successor to this one. Worth checking out if you love the Tomb of Horrors. I also know my upload frequency hasn't been great lately. Take comfort in knowing that I've actually gotten ahead on construction of this thing. So some of the larger rooms later on have actually already been constructed. Now I'm just working on the details, the little features of the room that make it interesting. Well, we're about halfway through this beast, and I'm enjoying making it. I hope you're enjoying watching it. If the idea of crafting for your tabletop games is new to you, you should know I'm not alone. Find us on Facebook, the Tabletop Crafters Guild, 35,000 members strong and growing. And if you enjoyed this particular video, then here's 2 other similar ones that I think you'll like also. Till I see you next time, I'm Wylock. Thanks for joining me. Make things and play games.